Hey everybody, this is Real Talk, where we ask real people real questions. And with that, let's jump right in.
Now is the time when we open up and you can agree, disagree, call someone names. The rule is speak first to be spoken over. Anyone got anything to say?
You're always looking for us to call each other names. You're always trying to start a fight, man.
Yeah,
You
that's
do true. You don't. I try to do that with the questions. Not only that, and I want to see some drama, man. I mean,
Fuck you, Ravens. How's that? Fuck you. Sorry, I'm only joking.
what's up?
Hey, Robin.
To the last mention, it was like we had a few people saying, do whatever you like to do. And then we heard that it's not clear how we connect our biological being with our emotions and our intentions. And I'm thinking, are we actually set free to decide what we want to do? Or is the meaning of life a bit different of what we ourselves think it is? So maybe we have to see it from a more philosophical perspective.
You know what? I'm gonna new rules. No subjectivity, no determinism, and no how you say no trying to determine what is consciousness. Those are the new rules, right? Y'all are gonna make decisions or not.
Yeah,
You
they're
do
going to
get
last
that
5 seconds.
basically eliminates 90% of our discussions, right? I'm just saying.
Yes.
We always come back to free will. It's kind of the thing.
y'all are gonna decide and that hold that decision to be true. None of this gray area stuff, okay?
The world is
That's
a
what
gray
the
area,
philosophy
man.
is,
I'm
man.
sorry you don't feel that way.
Nah,
Doesn't make it any different.
Anyone else?
I thought of two things. I thought of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, just because that was brought up in some other event. And so at the very top of that pyramid is self-actualization. And I think that is essentially what organisms are trying to do. Is like there's like this spontaneous concept of being and becoming something, and you become that, but then by the time you reach that, it's on to becoming something else. So I think the meaning is like a process of becoming. Except I also then thought of the film I Heart Huckabees, if anybody has seen this. And there's an existential detective who is trying to help out this guy figure out his anxieties. And this detective therapist type guy is describing to his client uh, what life is like. So he has a gray blanket that he's holding up, and underneath the blanket, he'll like push up through the blanket and be like, "This is the Eiffel Tower, and that's your mother, and this is fifth grade when you like had your first crush," and this is, and so the visual reference is that underneath the grayness, like even though there are these distinct things in life, it's all like under a gray blanket. I guess. I was hoping more people had seen that film, but so just that I think the concept in that was that there is like some sort of neutrality to everything. In that there is no meaning.
But
It's complicated.
I think
paradox.
the main question here is who defines that, right? So, like, the question is always, what is the meaning? Well, if somebody makes meaning out of something, it's got to be somebody or something that does that, right? So that's the part that we don't have the question for. If I say, oh, well, I make my own meaning, then I'm the person that's doing that definition. I don't know where I'm going with that. It's just semantics. As far as like the actual sentence structure is kind of weird when you think about it.
All right, well, I think we're ready to move on. There's a cut and dry one. I thought that was gonna go on for a little bit longer, but people can agree on the point of life.
I mean, what are
As-
the meaning behind tardigrades? Why do those fuckers exist? Excuse me.
The Star Trek thing?
What do you
No,
have against
these, like,
tardigrades?
they're called water bears. They're these like
But the extremophiles.
microscopic.
Yeah.
It's also
Yeah.
a Star Trek
What
thing.
do you have against them? What is your gripe against
Well, I
tardigrades?
don't know. No. I didn't have anything against them. Just like, what is their meaning? You know that.
Yeah, but it seems like you're very those fuckers. You know, like what's up?
Yeah. Scare me.
They're microscopic. How do they scare you?
Because like you've seen them, right? With like their suction teeth trunk thing.
You've probably
I
got a
don't know.
few on you right now, let's be honest.
Oh god.
Probably a few million on you.
They're everywhere.
Well, we'll find
Well-
out what their meaning is.
Well, I guess
10,000
that's
years
the
from now.
thing. I guess it would go to sentience, right? Because, like, we can say that I define my own meaning because I'm, oh shit, I'm breaking your new rule that you made up that doesn't make any sense. To not talk
No,
about
it's fine. It's fine.
consciousness.
It's fine.
It all comes back to consciousness, though. But yeah, anyway, I guess it's because we're sentient that we can make that definition, whereas, say, your water bear can't. Probably.
Right.
Don't find out.
Right.
And
We shall
And that-
see.
want to add one point of Viktor Frankl. He wrote a book about the importance of the meaning of life. But once we lose our own perspective of what our meaning was, then we also degrade very quickly in health, and also our mental state quickly degrades. So there's at least
Anyone-
some importance in having that meaning of life defined for ourselves.
Anyone with paper and pen can define the meaning of life. Has anyone ever heard of Eat, Pray, Love?
No,
Like,
Yeah, I've never
explain
seen
it to
the
me.
movie.
It sounds complicated.
yeah, it's up there, you know, in one of the higher most thinking power philosophy books. You know, it's up there with Plato's Republic and what's that book I just ordered? Hold on. Irving Schroeder's Nature and the Greeks and Science and Humanism.
Oh, Jesus.
So I've run out of sentence, but it's a good book. Yeah, I think we're ready to move on. Y'all ready for the
Yeah.
next question?
Yes.
Which is... Oh, I already forgot it. Hold on. Does society or biology define masculine, feminine, or any other trait of a person? Does society determine that big old muscles are only for men, or is that some biological factor that we are born with? Or does dresses have some sort of biological role in society? Zach?
I think with where we are now, it's society based. But I think it does stem from biological, from when man went out and hunt and do this stuff, right? They had to be big and strong to fight. So I think it stems from biology, but now, with where we are, I think it's all society based. Because we're not reliant on the stuff that formed it.
Hmm.
If that makes sense.
Right? Old stock.
Pretty much agree with that. I mean, it started off biologically based, and now society has much more of an impact, as in, let's say the Maoris in New Zealand, they value a woman with a large body because that means she comes from a good family and she's well looked after, while our society, different values for a woman. Their society, same values for a man. Big, fat guy is going to mow down anyone. Big, fat guy here? Yeah, not so much. So yeah, society more or less. I mean, like even the simple thing like blue for boys and pink for girls. That was the other way around 200 years ago. Pink was a boy's color, but just society decided at some point or another, no. For whatever reason, and I'm sure there's another 100 examples like that we could think of between us. So yeah, pretty much what Zach said.
Right. Robin one.
Well, as a geneticist, I would say it's biological and environmental, but it's not societal. The mistake we do as society is probably just defining it as in binary terms, while we know from biology everything is normally distributed. And those distributions also tend to overlap between males and females, and that's why we are confused now as society. But ultimately, it's just of biological origin, and when we would just restart our whole civilization, I'm pretty sure we would come up with these same concepts we have now. So, for me, it's biological.
Right. Robin.
So we started off as hunters and gatherers, and we had certain thoughts on what made someone good for the tribe, what brought values. If you say muscles, that would make a very good, let's say, hunter. So that was important back in the days. But our society has progressed so fast that certain things like that are no longer the same value as they were back in the day when we were hunters and gatherers. So in that way, society looked at those things and started to reform opinions on it. So let's say a dress. Now it's more of a, how do you say it? It's more of a, there's different opinions on those traits who were back in the day looked at more for functionality than they are now, since it's less, you can go to the supermarket these days instead of going out for hunting. So I would say it's more of a society thing right now than it was back in the day. It was more important back in the day, but now it's more like an extra or something. Yeah.
All right. Paulo.
Can you repeat the question? I just want to be sure that I'm not off subject.
Are gender constructs based on biology or societal factors?
Right now, society, but before it was obviously biology. I would prefer it would be biology because it would make things a lot easier in life. There would be less problems, There would be less people complaining and everything. But because of, I don't think gender is a thing anymore, honestly. Like, people have destroyed the meaning of gender. Sorry if that offends you or anything. I think that gender is not a thing anymore, sadly. If people think they can be what they want, if they think they are what they say. I think that's not good. That's it.
Cool. So I immediately differentiate sex. One sex is their biology, and then one's gender is a performance. So I've agreed with what I've heard so far that as we've moved away from this hunter-gatherer agrarian society and into the Industrial Revolution, and now into where we don't have to really use our bodies to perform so many tasks in our lives, it has become more focused on gender rather than what is your sex. Um, I don't know. I do see gender as something that sort of starts to dissipate at certain levels, but in the second and third worlds, there definitely still are distinctions, and there's not as much of an acceptance yet of trans cultures and the such and the like. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Hey, you gonna make it fun yourself? So, you're right. I mean, you have gender and you have sex. The thing is, it's like, I think something that Robin one mentioned that we're not really thinking about is the fact that this goes back and forth. So culture affects biology, biology affects culture as well. So there are
animals. I read an article the other day. I forget what it was, but that's the thing. So you can't say that it's purely culture because, in other words, the animal kingdom is something we use to see what exists in biology that is divorced from culture. Although I would also say that probably animals can have culture as well. Especially when you have like trading and using tools and things like that. You could argue that that's also part of the culture. But anyway, um, I would say in the fact that uh, you can have uh, animals that express behavior of all kinds of different um, genders and things like that. That suggests biology, but then, of course, as we know, in society, it's also expressed through culture by the way people dress and the way they talk and things like that. So it's one and the same. Your biology affects the culture, and then that gets dispersed and spread throughout the culture, and then and that uh, also it's all connected. Basically, is what I would say. And yes, I would make the distinction between sex and gender because you have um, your physical bits and bobs, and then you have what's in your brain. But guess what? What's in your brain is also biology because it's in your brain. There's neurons there, so it's a big blender. Mix it all up and make a smoothie. There's my answer.
Now it's time to open up. So if anyone has any points to debate against each other or just elaborate on their previous points, you're welcome to. That speak will get spoken over to you. You don't have to raise your hand. Just spew out the words.
So I was thinking that separating sex and gender is kind of social constructivism because in the end we don't learn anything from it. We're just saying they're just more words for things. So the thing is, now that we have to ask, like, if I feel like a male, could I also decide to feel like a female, or would I just be who I am? So can I make an active decision who I want to be, or am I still just who I am? And if I cannot make myself the conscious decision to change that, then I would say we shouldn't have sex and gender as two separate terms. It's just more complicated in that sense then, but still we cannot pick it what we want.
Well, I don't know because I I can't believe I'm about to say this, but it's mostly just because of something I was thinking about earlier. Because just to let you know, I've made friends who are trans, so I'm not trying to be disrespectful at all when I say this. I'm just trying to think through things logically. Um, the because there also pain. Think about pain, right? So you would say that you can't really not feel pain. Like if you prick me with a needle, it's gonna hurt, right? But the thing is if you look at monks, and there are many people who, well, I guess actually I take that back because it's not that they don't feel pain; they just somehow modify their thoughts to not react to it. So I guess that's different. Never mind. I was going down a because there were.
I think it's disassociation they do.
Yeah,
Separate their mind from their body.
Yeah, because I was gonna say there are people that can basically not feel pain as much, walking over hot coals and things like that. So I'm saying, what is choice in general? What does it mean when we choose things? Because there are certain bodily functions that it seems like we can choose that we wouldn't really think we could. But I think you're right. That's not really the same. It's not comparing apples to apples, probably. But did I have a point to that? Oh no, I just trailed off. I apologize. I'll let you.
But just to clarify, so because some people may decide to change their gender that disingenuously that we shouldn't have that separation of sex and gender at all. I think that's unfair to the people that genuinely do
I'm
feel.
not saying that.
Oh, sorry.
Someone who is trans, he was
Yeah.
maybe trans all along. So like,
Yeah.
it might have come up at some point in his life that he realized that he is, but it was always part of him. That's
Oh,
what I'm
sorry.
saying.
Okay, I misunderstood. Sorry about that.
But I'm sorry. Could you say that again? I apologize.
So if someone is trans, then it might be part of his biological makeup. And also we have this interaction, as you said before, between environment and our biology and epigenetics.
Right.
But I'm saying it's a long process, and it's probably already part of that person that he feels that he's trans. It's not just a decision from one moment to the next, but it's really part of him. And
Right.
by separating
exactly.
sex and gender, we say you can pick, but I say you cannot pick, but you are already trans or you're not trans. I'm not judging anyone to be it, because it's just part of our biology in a way. I'm just saying we should look at it from a different perspective. That we cannot just pick; it is already us.
Right. I don't think that's what they were saying, though. Because it's not that they were separate. They weren't saying you can pick, and maybe I'm rephrasing someone else's words in a way that's disingenuous. I don't mean to do so, but I think they were saying that if you have a body, you got X, outer and inning, right? So then, other than that, it is also said. Then also culture slightly influences how that expresses itself, probably. Not so much whether you are or you aren't, how you react to those things in public, I guess, would be my interpretation.
I would agree with you, since I guess biology didn't really change the last 200 years, and now we see a lot more freedom in the world, and we see a lot more people coming out. So in that sense, society is allowing us to be more ourselves. So on that point, I agree with you.
Yeah.
What's interesting is there have been extremes of how the body is represented since the Industrial Revolution, and especially since the onset of capitalism, wherein females, especially in the Western world, don't have to have the extra weight. They don't have to have those childbearing hips because they're not having the large families to work on the farm anymore. And from that, you get a culture of women wanting to be thin and anorexia at the very extreme. And then also you have men who are pumping iron, and which is also another form of anorexia. Men who want to bulk up, and for no reason in particular, just to have that look. So yeah.
I think Ravens asked yet another question that we all agree on, and that's why he ran off.
Probably. I don't know where he went.
Yeah, he's not a fan of agreement. I think we can all
Come on,
agree
Zach.
on that.
Oh,
You
because
have
we're
the
agreeing.
opportunity. Serious question. Serious fucking question. Come on, let's go.
Okay, let's have a look. Do we think about...
So we're
I'm not
just sitting around
convinced
having a
enough.
friendly chit chat instead of a
we
real
still ask
philosophical
questions.
debate.
So, if we go next question, I'll get general consensus because I'm not a dictator like Raven. How much influence on our personalities do other people have? Yay or nay? Good question, bad question.
Let's say.
Everyone's going to say yes. Everyone's going to say there's a bitch. Everyone will.
Okay.
Come on.
Say yes
You
to
can
us.
do it, Zach. Come on.
I'll have a look.
Well, I think the thing is, like, of course, everyone is influenced by other people. I think the question is more about how much. Like, how much can you say, like, I am completely influenced by this other person, you know, like a cult leader, versus I am completely my own person, I guess.
I feel like as I get older, I start to deconstruct like the amalgamation of my personality, and I start to see more clearly facets of my personality that come from and where they come from. So, it's almost to the point where it's like you keep peeling the onion. It's like, where is the actual core? Like, what is the essence of you? Because
Okay,
I don't
what
know.
defines
Sometimes I
you? Have we done
right.
what defines an individual?
I'm sorry.
I
Can
think we've
ask
done
me this
versions
question?
of it, but I don't know if we've
Someone
gotten that
else.
exact thing.
Okay. Well, who are you? That's the question. Let's go with that. Nice and vague. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Kieran.
Who
Are you? Okay.
Okay, so are you more than just your, who are you? Are you more than just your thoughts? Are you just the thoughts? Is there some sort of soul? What makes you you? Is
are the
everything
average of
you?
the 5 people you
Is your
hang out
body
with.
you?
Most.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
we did
Here you
this
go.
like 2 weeks
I don't remember.
ago.
Oh shit. Plus, we've got mostly new people in here, so
True. Okay. So what makes you you? Yes, mainly your personality and your thoughts and all that. Physically, yes, it's still you. It's part of you. You wouldn't like to lose any part of you. It's all precious. But mainly personality is what makes you you. Because you can
what
have
is your
identical
personality?
twins. Huh? Oh,
What is
it's
your
neuron,
personality? What is the essence of you?
brain.
Very okay. Yeah.
I know, yeah, I know, but that's all I got.
Fair enough. So I would argue, I guess, from a psychological standpoint, that is the prefrontal cortex, that since you get that damage, you will dissociate from your own personality, even though you still have your same memory. So there's something who drives who's you, and that is that cortex. The other thing is if you take drugs, then you can also still dissociate from who you think you were. I would say it's very specifically biologically in that localized area. Yeah, so I would say it's just biology. Well,
Okay, Ruba.
I would say it's mostly whoa. Is it yeah, it's my turn to speak or?
yes.
Yeah, it's your turn, man.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I would say it's a combination of three major things. I would say the way you were raised, genes, and I would say the 5 people you hang out most with. That those are, or it wouldn't be necessarily hang out, but like influence. Say you watch like a YouTuber every day, and he has certain characteristics. Then at a certain point, you're gonna adapt to it. But then there's also, your environment. So that means like the way you were raised and what you saw from that. What you took from it, and yeah, the people you hang out with. Like if you think about it, look at the people you have around you that are like closest to you. You see the most. You're probably gonna say a few things that they say. You're probably gonna copy some, character traits from them. And I would say like genes is also a major influence on that because say you have like ADHD, then you're gonna be like say you got like the advanced type, then you're gonna be more like on your impulses. Like you're gonna have less dopamine, so you're gonna do more things impulsively than let's say someone who had other genes where he doesn't have ADHD. So that would also like be the defining factor. So I think those things combined make you you. And if you think about it, like if you remove a leg from yourself, I wouldn't recommend, by the way, you're still you. But I saw an interesting video about it. Like, how far can you go with what makes you you? And it's a pretty existential crisis tier video, I would say. You can go really deep into it, but basically, you can sum it up with your brain. It's basically who you are. So yeah.
Okay. I walked into here late, so I'm not exactly sure totally what I'm talking about here, but there are people who have been brought up by animals, and they land up being just like the animals. And then we have dogs that are brought up by people who actually, in many ways, think they're people, which is, it could only go so far in both cases. I guess when you bring up a chimpanzee in a human environment, it becomes a lot more human because it has a lot closer physicality also. But both of them can go pretty far in. Well, once again, if you have a human being and you bring it up in a monkey colony, totally, it's going to damn well be as much of a monkey as possible. And I'm not sure if this adds or not, but let me throw that into the mix here. Thank you.
Okay. Matt the scientist just joined, so we'll go to Pala. Pronunciation's probably fucked, but hey.
Okay, so I hear a lot of complicated words for my 14-year-old brain. It's not complicated, but I think that what makes a person him is, yes, it's kind of like the gene and everything, but I think it's more simple than that. I think it's more like what color you like, what's your favorite animal, what's your favorite car, what's your favorite place on the world. I think that's what makes you, your favorite things. I don't think it's like, I think that's most important. Genes are in second place for me. I think that what you like is in first place. That's what I have to say.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, I heard this story, something about a woman who, while during her pregnancy, her husband died, and she became severely depressed in the last trimester, and the fetus, or the baby, I think at that point, experienced the depression on a chemical level. So then when the baby was born, it was born depressed, in the same way that if a mother is doing crack or something like that. So so I think the chemical level is first and foremost objectively defines you, but then subjectively it's the environment that you're raised in, and the people closest to you, the people that you admire, kind of make up who you are. And I think there's a fog to knowing like exactly what, if you try to pin exactly what you are, you can never find it. There's something else I also thought of was, I can't think of the name of this artist. She's a performance artist, and throughout her life, she received multiple cosmetic surgeries in order to achieve the ideal features that both she and society revered, which I thought was that was her work, that was her art. So, what are you? Are you what your biology is, or are you what everyone else tells you to be, wants you to be, and fade out?
Okay. Okay, he's alive. Miller.
So I I have complicated thoughts on this. You can always say, it's genes or it's experience. Obviously, it's a mix. That would be a bit of a cop out for me to just say it's a little bit of both. It's everything, and then just in with that. I mean, obviously that's true, but I think it gets a little more complicated than that. the oh, sorry, this is distracting. Um, the thing about it is, I remember people telling me that if I had a problem of some sort, they would always say, "Oh, it's all an attitude," right? So, and this is not exactly the same thing. It's not exactly who you are, but what you need to do to um, solve problems. Some people would say, "Oh, just move," and then others, like say a Buddhist monk or something, would say, "Oh, it's all inside yourself. Just meditate, or you don't need to change your environment." Um, and I had always leaned more towards the environment side. That's why I would say in general that you are more than your genetics. You are your environment. But I think the thing is that even your environment also affects your future environment. So it's not just one thing that you choose at one point. It's always going in on itself. And I know I'm going to go over my 2 minutes here, but I feel with this topic it's important to, so I apologize. But the I, I think you can't just sit in a corner and meditate and become a better person, but you also equally cannot just go and do whatever sounds fun and jump out of a plane and then suddenly that is the answer as well. I think it's a combination, but what that combination is, and this is the key, this is where it's not just a generic answer. What that combination is, I do believe, is unique for each person. And that is not only what makes them them, but also is key to what a better way to live their life would be. Okay, I know I went over. I'm sorry, but I think it was worth it.
We're not too structured.
Yeah, that makes
Before we
sense.
open up, we should probably go over the rules quickly. So, if you want to participate, take a seat at the back. There's a viewing area. Basic. Starts in a circle from my left to my right. Everyone gets a chance to speak. Then we'll open up. Basic rules. Let people finish their point. Ask to talk about your religion. Anything else that's important? Yeah, try and make your point under 2 minutes. Basic stuff. So, yeah, I guess it's time to open up. So, if anyone had any points to elaborate on or disagree with people, now's the time. It's because
Mello, you said jumping out of the plane isn't a way for someone to find themselves, but what if it turns out that's what they love doing and jumping out of the plane just all of a sudden opens that door for them?
Why would someone like
Yeah.
that?
Why?
Why would someone
Because
love
it's
that?
awesome. It is awesome.
Jump from the plane without a parachute?
Yeah.
I thought what he was saying was if you just jump out of the plane and your body splatters on the ground, like that's not the end all be all. Like you still got to make some
Oh,
kind
right,
of
okay,
effort.
sorry.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Don't apologize. Call me a name.
There's one more.
So, yeah, I wasn't really talking about. I didn't imply death at any point. I just picked jumping out
Well,
of a plane.
metaphoric. Yeah.
Yeah, I just picked jumping out of a plane as a pleasurable activity. You could substitute it with cooking.
So, yeah.
Metaphor.
But what?
What's the point?
Yeah.
What's the point around the metaphor? Me making that metaphor.
The point was that it's. How do I say this? Well, I don't want to misinterpret my own words or You cannot become a better person simply by relying on externals. But equally, you cannot exclude externals. because it would be impossible to sit in a dark room and just meditate for your whole life and be a happy person. I know that is probably, you know, if you think about.
Sounds like you're contradicting yourself a little bit, are you, Eddie? Just a little?
Maybe.
It's a very ambiguous topic, by the way, right? So there's going to be contradiction if because it's a challenging subject to express. But to your point, how I see is that you know, you gotta yes, you cannot depend on external factors to be happy, what society dictates, but you also cannot exclude them because otherwise, let's say, even I know sounds extreme, like a murder, someone who enjoys killing a person. I mean, that's not right, right? So versus someone who actually likes cooking, and it was actually right. So there has to be a balance and common sense in there.
Right. And your external actions have to match who you feel like you are. And when there's a mismatch there, I don't think that's right. And
Then you
I'm
can
sorry.
start talking about ethics, right? There's an ethical aspect in that equation as well.
Right. Yeah. Because, like, for example, you know what? We're all friends here. I want to travel. I know I'm a cliche, the young guy that wants to travel, you know, backpacking, etc. I also hate the fact that I'm a cliche, so, you know, don't worry about that. I've thought about it. But the point is, the point is, let's say I never get to do that, but I somehow find internal, I don't want to say happiness, but well-being, or just the ability to not need to go and do something, you know, for that, but just fulfill yourself, you know, fulfillment. Fulfillment, that's the word. Um, so there have been people that have told me you need to change your attitude in order for self-fulfillment, and then there are others that say you can't do that just from internal stimulus. You also need to go and do something. So that's the dichotomy that I was trying to bring up. I'm not trying to say one way is better than the other. In fact, I would love to get some input from some of the older folks, but um, that's what I was trying to lay out. I don't think I did it very well, and for that I apologize.
Well, who you are is, I think, touching on a subject from an earlier discussion on, like, it's really coming down to style in, like, the algorithm of the choices that you make, which is unique to you, and that's what makes you. And I'm very familiar myself with this attitude. You need to change your attitude, or the phrase, you need an attitude adjustment. My values, my outlook on life in general, like, is very different from the rest of my family, and therefore I've not fit in the way that they fit into society. I found my own path, but um, you can't change that. There's something, it, even if you try to suppress what you are, it will come out in other ways, and your health will suffer first and foremost. And I think your health and well-being should come above all, and you know, you should try to fulfill what your imagination holds.
Right.
Yeah.
This got a little personal, but you know, trying to keep it general to the philosophy and how we all experience life. I think everybody picks where they are on that spectrum, from being able to rely on themselves versus external factors. Okay, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
No. Sorry to interrupt. I was just, I think we are sort of overlapping concepts, and is because of course, like I said, it's a complex subject. But to your point, I mean, it's just kind of like to twist a bit the plot here. Let's say you feel good about doing drugs, of really, let's say, meth as a really bad drug, and you like that, you feel good about it, it makes you feel well. And then someone says, you got to have an attitude correction, you got to stop using drugs. The person who's saying that is correct. So there's that aspects, and what you're saying is that is for you. You cannot deny who you are and what you enjoy. In that case, you have to correct yourself.
Funny enough, I think when people are telling you to stop, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but when people are telling someone to stop the drugs, it's almost because they're not doing the drugs in the right way. And I don't think there is a right way to do it. Maybe in moderation,
Depends on the drug.
there's vitamins you can take to sort of like like magnesium and
Well, and
thiamine,
also, I think mostly isn't
to
that an
supplement your
issue
drug
with
use.
other people? So, like, if the person had no family, it wouldn't matter, right?
Yeah.
Like, if
If you don't
it
have
was just
responsibilities.
a single meth head in the world, there would be no one to like. There would be it would not be sad because it's just them. But then that what I've heard is the effects ripple out. But the thing is that's that whole thing I've said in the past with other things of the circle of concern. Who do you care about affecting positively or negatively? Um, and I think that's something everyone has to answer for themselves. Now I've made myself sound like a meth head, but I was just trying to make a point.
No.
Basically, what you're saying too, and what you are saying, right, is when we go out, we always present ourselves in a certain way in certain situations. Say you go to your job, you are acting like an employee. You go to your grandma, you act like you play the role of a grandchild. You go to your mom, you play the role of a son. Then you behave a bit differently, but that's the situation. But I think coming to a conclusion on that point, when you are alone, that is when you know who you really are. When there's no one around to, what you were saying, Mello, to
Right.
put the responsibility on how you're behaving, who you are. When there's no one around, then you actually know like how you behave, who you actually are. That's my point.
Which is why I think having people around for someone's entire life is a bad thing. And that is an opinion I hold quite strongly. I used to be pretty wishy-washy and not have any strong opinions. That's one I do hold.
Yeah, we are always constantly changing, and like, how do we mitigate? We're changing because our biology is changing, and then that affects like how you're thinking, how you're acting in the world. What your boundaries are, things like that. Um, yeah, this concept of Well, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole.
I was gonna say about you're talking basically what I see even from a philosophical standpoint. We are sort of talking about ethics theories such as utilitarianism or selfishness. So, so for instance, utilitarianism theory in ethics says that whatever actions you do should be based on the greatest good or number. So meaning that whatever decisions you make, sort of, let's say you're passing by in a hospital and they need organs, and you have an organ, you have a heart, you have a liver, you have a lung, and that hospital needs all those threes. What is the utilitarian ethic decisions here is that you have to donate that to them for the greater good, so to save the most amount of lives. So you're depending on a definition made by society. Where on the other hand, there's also the consequentialism that is basically whatever actions you do is based on the consequence that you get, and also exceptionalism that is basically what you guys are saying right now is that you're actually defining what is right, what is wrong, based on yourself, what you feel about yourself instead of others. So I think it's good. Just wanted to highlight it's good to frame when you're talking about complex definitions like we're doing right now. I just wanted to bring to light some definitions so we can buckle those up, so we can have a better understanding about what we're trying to understand. If you know what I mean?
I appreciate that. I knew about utilitarianism. I didn't know about those others, so thank you.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Okay. I guess that means time for the next question. Everyone's happy and there's nothing else to say on this one? Sean? Okay. So, what cannot be self-taught? What do you have to rely on others to learn? Yeah. You can go down any route you like with this, life lessons or, scientific knowledge. What do you think can't be self-taught? Is older
Sure.
stock here?
Can't be self-taught.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I'd say basic behaviors when you're a baby. You need your parents, your family to show you how to behave in a social way, I suppose. I mean, the feral children might attest to that. They don't learn how to behave. Well, they do learn how to behave socially, but only in accordance with the society they're in, be it wolves or monkeys or whatever. So maybe that. I don't know. I need time to think on that. I'm going to let other people talk. I'll come back when the circle opens
Okay.
up.
Yeah, Dr. Garbage.
No,
Great
I
name.
think what I think that things that cannot be self-learned is experience and wisdom. So, for instance, someone who does a mistake, because I always like this word that the more you know, the more you don't know, and you do not know what you do not know. So, and the way how you can learn about this and make decisions or making the right decisions is through experience and wisdom. And sometimes things on a book cannot be self-learned, or you cannot read about that. You have to experience it as years, or even let's say in case now coronavirus, we cannot learn about coronavirus. We cannot prepare for a coronavirus. We are now more prepared because we are experiencing it, and the data is still new, and we will know it more about it as more time passes, as history passes. So yeah, that's what I think.
Okay.
Yeah, like Allstock said, when you're a baby, you have to, you need other people to learn. But when you're an adult, I don't think there is anything you can't learn. Today, there's a YouTube tutorial for everything.
Yes.
Very interesting point of view. What is this guy's name? Mr. I. Did you want to speak? Well, kind of. In some sense, you have to learn stuff from other people. I mean, most of us aren't going to do what the guy did in the bathtub and figure out what calculus is. A lot of things come from culture. If we were on our own and we didn't have the learning of elsewhere, we'd be back in the caveman time. So there's only so much we could learn by ourselves. Most of our knowledge has to come from other people, including back to the monkeys. With Harry Harlow, if you didn't have your parents teach you love, people don't learn. Even that has to go back to other people. So internally, I don't think we have all many resources. And whether this makes any sense or not, who knows? Thank you.
Well said.
Okay. I don't know if you just joined. Lilith, did you want to speak? No?
No, I got here too late. I don't even know what really being
Okay, no problem. Big Ray then.
I would say like most things it seems can be learned through observance. I was thinking one of the most important things in order to function in the society in society and civilization is being able to read. So like, a child can probably teach themselves how to walk and babble, and maybe eventually start learning words, but there needs to be like some sort of interaction in order to understand what writing is, what concepts are. So That was my main focus.
Okay. Mellow. All right. You have to learn through practice. Period. You have to learn through practice. I don't care what it is. Um, the thing is, and this is where it gets tricky, is you can't always practice what you want to learn immediately. And also, some things that are considered practice of a skill are not the most realistic versions of that skill. I'm not going to go over my own personal experience with that, just to say that I have a lot. Yeah, well, okay, but relative to my lifespan, I have a lot of experience with that. The uh, thing is you have to, you can't learn, like say for example, I want to learn how to, well, okay, what about something very broad and vague, like we were discussing earlier? How to live your best life. I know that sounds like someone's Instagram quote that's about to sell you weight loss tea, but the point is, um, you can't learn that by reading in a book, can you? I mean, if that were the case, then society would be perfect. Because everyone will be doing what they need to be doing because they read it in a book. So that doesn't work. But like I said before, at the same time, I can't build the Brooklyn Bridge. Let's say I wanted to build the Brooklyn Bridge. I can't do that immediately. So I have to practice the sub skills. Maybe how to do a rivet or a nail or how to heat metal, right? So I have to build up to whatever the thing is. But even those sub skills themselves are not the same as the final thing because, I guess what I'm saying is it's a difference. There's a philosophical term. It's not a difference in amount. It's a difference in kind. It's a totally different thing doing the whole skill put together than the sum of the sub skills of all of the parts. And that is the problem with modern education. And, I feel like I should have one of those Che Guevara, like, Columbia hats on, with like army fatigues, because that's what I would, if I were to be a revolutionary, that's what I would say. Viva la new version of education. But uh, anyway, the whole is not just the sum of the parts when it comes to education. Period.
Yeah. Maybe, did you hear the question? Want to speak?
I just got here, but I could likely figure it out what his meaning of intelligence is and learning.
Okay, what was the question?
Meaning of
What
intelligence.
what skills need to be taught? What can you not learn?
Oh, what can't be self-taught?
What can't be self?
That was it.
Oh, what cannot be self-taught? Well, I'm, well, I mean, if we're going by that, I don't know if somebody addressed it, but instinct, the baby bird, know to open its mouth for its mother. It just does. A snake doesn't need information to help it slither away out of its shell and hunt. It doesn't need help with that. It's just instinct. Human doesn't need instinct to help feed off of breast milk, or anyone does. That's biologically ingrained into our minds that hunger is bad, and we need to figure out a way to end said hunger. Well, generally the case. That's hunger driving in the pursuit of instinct, but other factors is just main survival and, well, sexual.
Okay. I guess it's time to open up the floor.
I have a
Anyone wants to
question.
say anything?
If somebody's audio is breaking up, is that just me or is it for everybody? Is
I
it?
assume that was just me.
No,
Yeah.
was it breaking up?
Oh. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
sometimes when someone's speaking, I cannot hear all of what they're saying. The audio is breaking up. It's really choppy, and I don't know if
Yeah.
that's just me or.
It
Sometimes
depends
it's
on
just you,
on which
sometimes
side
it
the internet
sounds-
issue is.
Okay.
Sometimes it's on your side, sometimes on the side of the other people.
Okay.
It's hard to
Was I
tell.
breaking up? I'm sorry if I was.
No, I mean you can't
Yeah.
control it. So.
Oh,
No. So is everyone happy with everything they said?
Well,
Except I want to say that
Mhm.
I just now realized that I didn't even answer the question because I kind of went in my rant mode, and I'm sorry for that.
Yeah. I think Raven's not here. We can do what we like, can't we?
Yeah.
Where is Raven?
I would say
Apparently an
instinct.
important phone call.
Okay.
God knows.
How important can a phone call be for a
That was a blinder.
very small YouTube channel posted off of
I
a
don't think I'm
very
gonna assume
popular
it's not about
video
real
game.
talk.
It's
I'm
not about
gonna
real talk?
assume it's probably personal.
Ah, likely.
Because I don't really think we'd have any important phone calls about real talk. I don't.
You
think
should
so.
open a phone line. That's a good point. Wouldn't that be funny?
Yes.
I always thought this was live streamed, but when I
Color.
went to your guys' YouTube channel, I didn't see the live stream.
It's not live streamed. It's just recorded and then uploaded.
Mm.
It's everywhere.
If you ever do a
Probably.
live stream, that would be kind of fun.
On Twitch.
Yeah, maybe.
Then you could actually monitor questions and new ones. Also, your hand is falling
We
through the
do
floor.
have a Discord for question submissions. So, I don't know. I don't know too much about streaming. But speaking about YouTube, I forgot to do this earlier. This is recorded, so you can find it later. It's also pretty much on every what's the word? Podcast
Media?
service. Yeah. So yeah, it's there. Go find it. There's stuff all around you in the world. But, yeah. Whatever. So everyone happy with that
Let's just
question?
gather the information, put it to use. I'm sorry.
No, I'm fine with this.
Yeah. So what was the next one? All right. Yeah. What responsibility does an individual have in the future of society? How much responsibility? Yeah. Not a lot of people.
Okay.
Hmm.
What was the
Okay,
question?
are we talking about the responsibility of the individual or the responsibility one holds over others, per se, their own
The
children's lives,
responsibility
or...
the individual has for the future of society.
Okay.
So
The
individual
society affecting
responsibility.
others, right?
Yeah. Well, take it how you will. Okay. So Matt, if he's alive,
Yeah, you were breaking up for me. I couldn't hear the question.
am I still breaking up?
No.
Okay. What responsibility does an individual hold for the future of society?
Yeah, everybody should think about the greater good and not about himself. But that's not what people do.
Okay. So, are you happy with that? Okay. Short and concise. So, eyes. Yeah. Have anything? Oh, Mr. I should say. Nope. Gonna die down today. Okay, great.
I've known people who will lay down their whole life and well-being for the good of others. And, they lose sight of themselves. They lose care for themselves, which I think is a bit extreme. Um, I think there's like certain cultures that have tried to imbue like some major sense of responsibility for the world they live in. But I also see at the same time that it can put a lot of stress and anxiety. As an individual, like you are just a drop in the freaking desert. um, but at the same time, like even if you have an effect on just one person, like are you responsible for that? Um,
Butterfly effect.
yeah, I um I don't know how to say this without being too personal. Like I've definitely before suffered a lot of anxiety because I thought I've had like major effects on other people's decisions on their life path. Um I don't know. I think as long as you do the best that you know how to do, like that is you've got to try whatever. The part that I get frustrated with is what is it exactly you're supposed to do? We don't live in a caste society or like in a communist structure where you're like born into something and then you don't even have to try to figure out what to do. You just like do what you're told. I think it's like a lot more I think it's a lot more difficult to try to figure that out for yourself. Um, I'm just going to add too that I'm still getting adapted to VR, and I find that it makes my eyes really tired. It makes my mind like I should probably be drinking like a gallon of coffee to go with this whole experience because still trying to find a way to focus in this. So thanks.
Sorry,
That just takes time. Okay.
Generally, what helped me is that I I understand. I know the separation between reality and virtual, but when I put on the headset, I focus on myself and make sure that I understand that this is my reality at the moment. I accepted the fact that reality is now mobile. It is malleable. You can shape it. You can change it the way you want. And there's AR, VR, and well, even now I think JR, jumbled reality.
Hell is jail?
So I just picture and I fully focus saying that these are now my hands. I'm okay with that, and then I continue.
Yeah, that I'm fine with. It's just that it literally makes me feel very tired.
Oh,
Like
that's why
I
people
just
sleep
got
in VR. Apparently, it just
because I just
You're
got
looking
apparently
focus
glasses.
kicks
right
them
Not
out.
to detour too much, but I just got glasses like for looking at the computer screen to block the blue light. But I don't find a way I could maybe I could wear those glasses with the VR thing over. But
Which headset do you have?
You can turn
Because there
down
are
the
the Go.
screen
Spaces.
brightness.
I
Yeah,
know about the Go.
I turned
But
that way down. I have the graphics on just like the mid-level graphics.
Does the
But
Go have the night mode? Because I know the Oculus has
Yeah, it has.
a little button in the home that you can hit it, and it turns it all kind of like an orange glow that apparently negates the blue light.
I'll look for that.
Yeah, it has.
Okay, well, sorry to interrupt.
yeah, it's fine. It's a
No,
smooth
you're
work today.
asking.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, also, is sometimes the frame rate makes a difference, or just that depending on the app, it can give people a headache. I never got one, but some people do. But anyway,
Yeah, I got past the headache point. So
oh, okay. So the way I currently look at it, and keep in mind this always changes. People change over time. It's what they do. Um,
is that I can't help you until I'm to a point where I can help you. In other words, if you need something, I need to be able to provide that. So there's no way, like, say, for example, you take a baby and you tell the baby, be a good person, help others. What the hell is the baby going to do? It's going to poop itself and then make another problem that, for the person that it was supposedly supposed to help with whatever the thing was. So the point I'm trying to make is kind of that airplane stewardess mentality. I have to put my oxygen mask on before I can help anyone else. And now does that mean that you do that for 90% of your life, and that for 90% of your life you're trying to get yourself to a certain point, and then I'll throw a little money to a charity or something? No, that's not what that means. But I do think we have to get to a certain point of feeling. This is going to sound so. I hate that sometimes I sound like a motivational book incarnate, but you have to get to a point where you feel good about yourself. So that you can help others. So, and I don't think a lot of people are at that point. And I think that's because they have been told so much to help others that they forgot to help themselves get to a bare minimum of competency about living life. And you can probably tell I'm a little passionate about that because I am. Okay, that's what I had to say.
Oh,
He's
hello.
back. I
Hello.
can shoot back into my little hermit hole.
What question are we on?
Oh,
The
fuck, I
society
remember.
one, I believe.
Oh, what responsibility does an individual have for the future of society? It's an old one. I went back briefly on
okay.
the Discord.
And where are we?
To Davy,
At
I
Davy.
believe. Yes.
And I think we're gonna go back to Ramen, if I'm not mistaken. Because he just joined. Ramen, if you want to go first, that's completely acceptable. No? All
Do you
right.
want to join in?
Well, my belief as
Are we
a
talking about our feelings
patriotic American is that the individual is responsible for their own effect on society. It's their perception of society and the society itself. The government affects the effect. Sorry, the government affects the effect of the individual. I think last time I was here, I talked about America's government, the republic, and how it the and how the judge the how we pick representatives to represent us. So, if we're talking about another kind of famous one that we Americans have tried to stop, is communism. In communist society, it is the image of communism is that everybody is equal and therefore there is no corruption. The problem is, in order to run a sufficient and successful country, you need separation in order, because nobody wants to be making boxes their entire life. If somebody is out there who loves just boxes, good for them, but the majority in here, I would say, does not enjoy making boxes for their entire life. But in order to create a stable economy, an individual needs to make boxes. And the government, in
a sense, the communist government would allow the person to choose their box, essentially, their job. So, if that is the case, we have to understand that not all people enjoy making boxes, though in a capitalistic country that is necessary, and people understand for the economy to succeed, we need box makers or whatever. So the government affects the individual's perception, and that perception affects their choices in life. And those choices affect others. A couple things, right? Number one, I'm going to have to draw this to a close. It is now the official end of the event. We will, you guys are allowed to open up as soon as I finish talking, but now I would, right before I leave, I would like to point you guys to the sides of the walls and the back of the room, which you can find our YouTube channel, which this recording will be on. So if you were making thumbs down things the whole time and you would like to see yourself do that, you can find us on that YouTube channel. Also, the recording of this will be on Spotify, iTunes, and like 8 other different podcast websites or apps you can find that on. My Discord is up there, and if you go to my Discord, you'll be added to our server. We come up with questions, we come up with new ideas, we announce stuff, we announce when the next events are happening. Our Twitter is pretty much the Discord, but you can talk to us directly. You can hear when new stuff is coming out. You can we post about when new videos go up and all that.